Well, welcome everyone tonight. This is our first evening Better Together Thursdays conversation, and we have kind of late morning slots or evening slots, trying to anticipate the audience of when people might be free. And this is caring for your pastor. So we thought most pastors are probably in bed, exhausted by now. Or actually for lay people who really want to support their pastors in very creative and very touching ways. And so we'll be learning tonight and discussing that as well. And so happy for this format. We'll take our blessings as we come, but this was going to be one of our workshops at our physical regional assembly at Lake Ozark Christian Church on October 2nd. But because of Zoom and a little bit of creative thinking, we have scheduled most of the workshops in the series on Thursdays. So there'll be others coming up, and we have a couple that are already recorded. Invite you to look for them and to learn for them as well. But this is certainly one of the workshops I would have tried to have gone to at Regional Assembly, because there is no two finer people in our region to offer care. I know I'm seeing you. I mean, don't let your golden shadow overrun.
And the check is in the mail, Paul.
Okay. But
Thank you so
Bob
much.
is a go-to person when pastors or church people need his expertise and care for personal situation. And Coletta is an incredibly deeply spiritual liturgical leader and pastor, and I receive care just through her leadership, whether through morning stretches at our Persons in Ministry retreat or other types of expression and dance that she provides in worship settings and just wherever we are. So thank you both tonight, and I'll be quiet. You didn't come to hear me, but we'll take it over. And also welcome to all those who may be watching this later and a recording too. We honor your diligence to watch this too. So, all right.
Okay.
God bless us.
Thanks, Paul, for that very glowing introduction. That was great. I hope we live up to the expectation. I think as we prepared for this, we thought we would be having more lay people than clergy, but I think we have a lot of clergy here. And we reached out to one of our clergy colleagues to ask him about some of the things that have been really central to him in terms of what have been the challenges and what have been the joys of receiving various kinds of care and nurture from the congregation, and just some stumbling blocks and so forth. So gathering that kind of information is what we're going to be sharing with you tonight. We want this very much to be a dialogue. Part of what we've decided to do, particularly in this format, is for us to have some conversation with each other, and you get to listen in, but then we will be posing some particular questions for you. And then also, as Paul said, as you have thoughts or questions, just put them in the chat box and we'll respond to them. But before we do that, because many of us probably are zoomed out or Zoom fatigued or sitting a lot, and I have been sitting even more so lately because I'm nursing a broken toe, which I'm just five weeks, I'm probably a week or so to getting out of my boot. But I wanted us to do a little bit of physical stuff before we start doing just the verbal stuff. So if you want to stand, fine. And if you want to do this, fine. It's an invitation. You don't have to do anything. You can just sit there. But I'm going to scoot back and there go my crutches, and just stand up. And the first thing I'm going to invite you to do is just take a deep breath. So, and I like to stretch up my hands when I do that, and then let the breath out. And since you're in your own very own space, you can make as much noise on your exhale as you want to, because there's nobody else around. So reach up and let it out. And then just shake out a hand. Shake out the other hand. Shake out both hands. And shake out your head. And then shrug your shoulders up to your ears and let them drop. And do that again. And then just roll your shoulders back and then roll forward. And reach one arm up to the ceiling and stretch the other arm down. And then reverse that. Stretch one arm up and the other arm reach down. And bring both arms out about shoulder height. And give yourself a hug. And as one of my teachers said, you know, this is one of the few hugs that we are able to get these days. So imagine you're hugging somebody you really care about in addition to yourself, and then let it go. And then taking a big deep breath, fill that all the way down to your belly, all the way down to your toes, and let it out. And then have a seat. So I think the first thing we wanted to talk about is expectations, because caring and nurturing for ourselves as pastors and for members of congregations or people in congregations to have a caring, nurturing relationship toward the pastor, I think a big piece of what needs to be addressed are expectations. And so as we've talked about that, we've talked about the expectation that the pastor has of her or himself, and then expectations that members of churches, people in church have of them. And many of these are not conscious, but they're just
Much less spoken.
Much less spoken, implied, and not even realizing when pastor and parishioner come face to face that there's all this stuff that comes into that mix that is not even conscious. So as I said, our friend Mark, when we were talking with him, one of the things he said was many people, including the pastor, expect that the pastor is going to be the most spiritually mature person in the congregation. And that is, I think, something that both ministers and people in congregations carry with them. And on the one hand, probably that should be the reality, but not necessarily, because that can be very hierarchical. Oh, you know, you're this highly evolved, you're this enlightened person, you think that you should be, et cetera, et cetera. The reality is we are all on a journey. We're all at different places on that journey. We hope that as pastors, we have something to offer in terms of that we can be mentors and teachers. But I think all of us have experienced people in our churches who have definitely been mentors and teachers for us. So I think that was the first place we wanted to, the first jumping off point that we wanted to.
Yeah, I guess Coletta said that beautifully. For me as a counselor, there's always the difference between who I think I am and who I really am to other people. And so I may, as a pastor or layperson, think that I'm spiritually transformed or mature. Maybe not so much. So I think we, as human beings, we have an image that we think about of who we are, and then how we are experienced by other people. And those can sometimes be at odds, maybe significantly, maybe not.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think another thing we wanted to certainly bring into the conversation, and this just is overlaying everything that we're talking about, certainly in this time of dealing with this virus, being connected to congregations, being part of the gathered scattered, or the scattered gathered, whatever, poses different kinds of challenges. And as one of my clergy friends said, you know, anything that's hard, COVID just makes it harder. And so wherever there is a challenge within whatever the relationships are, whatever the things that need to happen within church life, it makes it much harder for those things to happen because we're dealing with this the distancing. And I'm imagining that churches that are represented here are dealing with this in different ways, but maybe that would be something for all of you to check in with us on and just say.
I think another thing that's a part of that is I think there is a continuum from introvert to extrovert, and how COVID impacts you can be very different if you are an introvert as opposed to an extrovert. I had one client of mine say, "Man, I'm really liking this working from home." And I thought, oh, well, here we have an introvert. And yet I know there are so many people that are just driven crazy by not being able to hug and reach out to people that they love, have loved for decades. So I think that's another way that COVID really manifests in people's lives differently.
Yeah. And yeah, people who really are hungry for face-to-face or fellowship time or any of those things that were normative when you met in a building. I was going to say, to tack on to what Bob was saying about the introvert-extrovert thing, he right now, his office is in our spare bedroom next door, and he's seeing clients on Zoom or on the phone, and in between clients, he takes our dog for a walk and grabs a bite to eat, and it's like, he's in heaven. So for someone who has so much time with people, he really is a prime introvert.
Yeah, I'm an introvert, definitely.
Yeah.
And you're more of an extrovert too.
I am, but I'm also really enjoying not having to be in church on Sunday morning, to be really honest with you. And I know that may be a sin, that's a confession, but we're doing virtual church. And I finished my sermon and recorded the sermon and the service today. And it's another silver lining to have Sunday mornings of breakfast or coffee or whatever and being with the family. So I just
want to, that was a really good example of spiritual maturity, because there's some people who would be aghast. Oh my gosh, a minister who doesn't want to be in church on Sunday morning. And I know plenty of people like that, and I honor that tradition. And yet I see Coletta as a spiritually mature person, because she can just say that matter-of-factly and not have an investment in your thinking she's wonderful or she's awful. And so that's having that trust to be able to be transparent, I think, is a really key part of helping our ministers, helping ourselves grow into deeper maturity. There needs to be a place where we can just speak our truth calmly and rationally, in spite of how people might react to it.
So I feel like this would be a good time to invite either comments or questions, because one of the things we want to do is certainly address particular questions that you may have come to this gathering hoping that you would have some conversation about or some discussion around. So coming back to that point of pastor as the most spiritually mature or the spiritually transformed person in the congregation. Any comments or questions or, you want to open up around that?
I think we're a cozy enough group. Should we just have people unmute themselves and speak the truth? Yeah, feel free to do that. Or again, you can chat me and I'll read your question or your point.
Not everybody.
Well, I'll chime in to break the ice, if you will. Just a
right.
matter of coincidence, I guess, or God incidents. Just random Facebook posts from a couple of pastors at different churches here in our region, just saying, please take care of your pastor. And your church folks, for speaking to pastors and for our lay leaders here, you may not realize your own level of stress. having to totally redo everything that you had developed a good pattern for, and to translate it into a virtual format, and caring for people without touching them and visiting them in the hospital. Everything is brand new. And none of us was trained in seminary, unless you went to a kind of seminary that I'm not familiar with on how to do all this. But we're learning as we go, and a lot of congregations are exercising patience with that.
And yet,
thank
Paul,
goodness.
I want
Go
to
ahead.
just tag on to that, because there again, you have the maturity to realize that it's okay not to know. Back in March, when this whole thing began to shut down, I was talking with a pastor, and he was frantic because he did not know how to get his worship service online. And so, and I said to him, you didn't go to IT school. You need to have a sermon that's really good, but you need to reach out to your congregation and find some smart 12-year-old who knows how to do this.
Right.
But I think that's the point of, I mean, there's a boundary there, because most of us didn't learn that. And to put that expectation on ourselves, and to have people in the congregation say, well, the service wasn't really that good. It looked pretty beginner. Well, yeah, that's because it was. So please step up. So that's a place of honesty and integrity and realistic expectations.
Well, and I think very much what we're talking about too is that ministry is people to people. I mean, it's such a hands-on, calling, and to have to shift all of that, to have people in our congregations who have medical concerns, and people who are in nursing care or facilities where the whole facility is shut down, and people are having to see friends and family through their windows. I mean, it's stressful. And so I think that how we offset that with our personal care is really paramount to this time.
So I keep getting these ideas about expectations, because I have talked to pastors who cognitively know I can't get to a nursing home, and who cognitively know that people are not holding it against them, but who hold it against themselves. And that's an irrational thought. It's an unhealthy thought, and it's very real for many people. And so that's the contradiction that I wanted to lift up.
So just thinking about that, I'm just gonna, this is just gonna be just sort of a trickle in here, but so thinking about ways to offset that internal pressure, certainly meditation and just breathing. I mean, if you aren't a person who is practiced at meditation, just breathing and paying attention to your breath is probably the simplest form of meditation, and do it for like 5 minutes a day to start out with, and then you can increase it as you want to. But what I find is that it's amazing how calming just taking deep breaths. I don't know if I should have asked if any of you noticed anything after we did that little warm-up thing, but I generally find that people find that they may feel tingly, they may feel like energy coming into their bodies, they may find that they just feel a little calmer. That is probably one of the simplest things.
So I would jump in with another one. I have no idea where I learned this. It's not mine. But the saying is, those who sing pray twice. And that's because it's body. You're using your diaphragm. And I had a woman in my virtual office, and she was quite anxious, but she was an organist and she knew the hymns of the church. And so I said, can we sing Count Your Blessings? And so we just sang it right there. And she knew the words better than I did. But when you're doing that, you're distracting from that anxiety and you're getting your whole body into it. That's a wonderful calming mechanism. And she felt more calm. And I said, this is a prescription for as many times as you need it every day. Okay.
I was going to say, one of the simple techniques that I enjoy is, and I'll just invite you to do this now too. So just rub your hands together, and maybe some of you have done this before, and you get to feel some of the heat in your hands, right? And then just put your hands over your eyes. And while you're doing that, just take a few breaths. And then just take your fingertips and mush your face around. Just squeeze. And many times we don't recognize how much we may be holding, especially too, since seeing people on our Zoom is one of the main ways we're communicating right now. We don't realize how much we are, using our face muscles. And so doing this is another way of just relaxing, going around your eye sockets, and then grabbing the tops of your ears and pulling up, and the back of your ears, pull down, and then your earlobes, and just rub between your thumb and forefinger, your ear. Because again, a lot of things are coming into our bodies and into our nervous systems through our ears, and we can get bombarded with sound, and that activates our nervous system, but can overload our nervous system too. And so those are a couple of things that you can do. That's a great one, Julie, to move your head from side to side and just massage those muscles in your neck. So.
And the other thing I'd say is you can't do this wrong.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, do you have, was there another question? Maybe, all right, we're going to just talk here for a second. Yeah. Oh, what? Yeah. Do you want to do the parent, adult, child stuff?
Okay.
Is that relevant?
Okay, this is just going to be a teaching piece, and I hope it. I'm not seeing the direct relevance, but I use it every day in my life, in my work. Back in 1965, Eric Berne wrote a book called Games People Play: Transactional Analysis Theory. So that's how far back I go. But he talked about the parent, adult, and child ego states. And I think when you know that about yourself and your pastor or parishioners, if you can use that understanding, then you will have a better way of acknowledging that you are in a safe place or a non-safe place. So let me just go through that briefly. We all have parent, adult, and child in us, in our minds and our hearts. So the parent examples would be, oh, you did great, Johnny or Jane, so that encouraging, loving. Or, Coletta, what's wrong with you? The scolding, the negative. The adult is, it's 7:20 or whatever time it is, it's the facts. And then the child is, woohoo, let's get on it, let's do it. Or, you hurt me and I'm mad. So both the parent and the child have the positive and the negative sides. I think too often when we get in church situations, we are coming, the complaining that Coletta was talking about, the conversations out in the parking lot, you know them. And that's where that critical parent comes in. Or the wounded victim. The pastor didn't do what I thought he or she should do. And it's really important when you are in your church situation or your home situation for you to know where you're coming from and where the other person is coming from. Because if you're coming from one of those negative parent or child places, then you are creating a situation of non-safety, of danger. And when any of us go into danger, that's fight or flight, and the mind shuts down. And so you cannot have a rational conversation if you are in fight or flight. And allowing yourself or seeing another person in the negative parts of the parent and the child will get you automatically into a defensive, unsafe position. And so in terms of who we need to be moving towards, it is that joyous child, that encouraging parent, and being able to speak the facts. rather than warping or twisting in a manipulative way.
Okay. Well, and tacking on to the, the parking lot conversations, or the complaining church person who, but they can't complain directly to the pastor. So they go a second route. So they manipulate through a board member or somebody else who will anonymously take that complaint. Well, there's a need that they're expressing through that complaint, that they aren't in a position emotionally where they feel like it's safe for them to say that to the pastor directly. And so figuring out how not to get hooked by that, I think that's to me, that's one of the biggest things about being in the adult state, is that somebody can be mad at you or about something in the church, and for you to not take it personally, because there's something more going on than whatever that particular issue is. And so first of all, to be able to discern that, I think discernment is an incredibly significant skill to develop, and to simply be able to hear and listen with an open ear, an open heart, recognizing that what this is, most often it is not about you, and generally it is about what that person's needs are at the moment, and then being able to calmly address what is happening, what the person's expressing. So I think not getting hooked. And also, like, especially with leaders in the congregation, for them to not get hooked by people's frustration and anger. I'm in a situation right now where we have a really awesome group of leaders who are all, it's like working with a whole group of adults. And it's like, what? It's really fun. and they are people who can hear frustrations and complaints and so forth from people in the congregation, and not take it personally, and pull back and bring their perspective from their various experiences, either in their work or just in their relationship skills, and decipher that and not get hooked by it. And so I think there's just a tremendous important piece to however you are in relationship with your church right now, whether it's electronically or face-to-face, the ability to not get hooked by manipulation is huge. I mean, we probably are singing to the choir here, but also I recognize when there have been times when I have let somebody just hook me like that, and it's like it happens without, it's unconscious. Right. And so being able to take a breath, pull back, and figure out what's yours and what is theirs. That's just a really important thing to do.
Right. I had an experience in my counseling office about 10 years ago, and this person just reamed me up one side and down the other, and I just felt like a piece of garbage. And he got up and walked out, and my head was spinning, and then I said, "Holy moly, that was my dad that just walked out of the room." I just totally gotten hooked by his criticism of me, which felt much like my dad's. So what I'm saying is, getting hooked is really important. It's not always easy to do. And that's the piece of realizing when you are escalated, when your chest is tight, when your shoulders go up, when your brow gets furrowed, for you to know the physiological symptoms of anxiety is really important. The sooner you know that, the sooner you can be aware. Going back to that situation, I knew within 5 minutes what the heck had happened. It took me 2 days to calm down emotionally. But that kind of thing happens, and having a counselor or a trusted friend, probably somebody outside the congregation, someone like Paul in a leadership position, having a person that you can talk to and sort through what the heck happened is really, really important. the sooner you do that, you're going to restore your own equilibrium and your ability to function.
I would say too that really makes me remember when I first started doing interim ministry 12 years ago, 14 years ago. One of the first things I did was I engaged with one of my good friends who is a spiritual director and a personal friend. And we actually, if you don't know, I'm also a licensed massage therapist. And so from the very first month that I started doing interim work, she and I had a trade worked out where she would do spiritual direction with me and I would give her a massage. And so many times what we would do is she'd come for a massage, we'd go have lunch and do spiritual direction in that order. And that relationship, but I also had another friend, another colleague who was a spiritual director, and I got regular massages. And I was exercising. So all of that stuff I was doing to take care of myself so that I didn't have to depend on people in my church, for friendship. They are friends, but I wasn't relying on them for friendship. I wasn't relying on them for counsel from a personal standpoint, but I knew who I could go to in the church when there was a situation in the church that I needed input from somebody to help sort that out. And I think those pieces are essential. I think for anybody in ministry, isolation is a risk, is a danger. And knowing how to not allow yourself to get isolated, knowing how to develop even just one close friend that you can talk about anything to, and they're not going to judge you, they're going to hear you, and they will give you honest feedback. That's another thing. But having connections, having people that you can trust, who have no connection to your church, is more important than I can say. And then just taking care of your physical being. Good exercise, good food, breathing, water, and laughter. Laughter is huge. If you don't have a source of humor, find one. Watch something goofy and find people you can laugh with. Because
and I just say that in Galatians chapter 5, the fruits of the Spirit, number 2 is joy. And I think laughter is a subset of joy. So it's definitely scriptural if you need that part of it. The other thing I want to get back to is the self-awareness piece. We've talked about not getting hooked. We've talked about isolation. But there are pastors and there are parishioners who have that isolated role from their own family of origin. And they may not even realize that they are isolated. So when you ask them, how you doing, Pastor? They're going to say, I am great. And they're either unaware that they are not great, or they are not great, and they sure as heck aren't going to be trusting you to manifest who you really are. So I think you really have to be able to watch the pastor, to be curious and to wonder. You know, I saw that look on the pastor's face when something happened. And it looked like there was some tension there. And if there was a way for you to say, hey, Pastor, what's going on? I saw that interaction. That's a hard thing to do. But when you're able to get outside of your own interests and into the interest of your pastor, as the Philippians scripture says, then you can see that there may be some kind of disruption in that pastor's manifestation, expression, that just kind of leaked out and then got pulled back very quickly. But that's the piece where parishioners need to be on their own journey of spiritual maturity, because the more you are not concerned about your own anxiety and your own depression because you've healed that to some extent, the more available you are to be present for the pastor or whomever.
Yeah. And I really think it's imperative to pay attention to the signals in your own body and your emotions that trigger that something is not the way it should be, that your joy is diminished, you feel tired all the time, or unmotivated, or anxious, or you feel like you're just not doing enough, or you're just stressed because you're doing too much, but
or both,
or any kind of judgment, any kind of self-judgment. That's a clue that there's something that you need to pay attention to. And so you may not always feel it in your body, but if there's something like that in your emotional state, one of the things that I think is really beneficial is writing that stuff out. Because if you have a journal, or even just a notepad, and just start writing everything that you feel. One of the things I like to recommend is the morning pages, which is first thing in the morning or soon after, when you're with your cup of coffee or tea or whatever. Just take and write 3 pages of everything that just comes, just pure stream of consciousness. Don't censor it, don't filter it, just write it out. And you might be surprised. You might be surprised at what's there. It might be joyful, it might be painful, it might be anything in between, but it's just an opportunity to get that stuff out, and get it out of here and onto the page. Because what happens from here through your arm and onto the page is that it can be very therapeutic. It also may be an opportunity for you to recognize there's something going on that I didn't realize, and maybe that's your cue to call for some help from a friend, or a trusted professional, another colleague that you trust. Those are all indicators that there's something here that you need to pay attention to. I was going to say one thing about joy, and this is just a little brag, but Bob and I just celebrated our 50th anniversary, which is crazy. Thank you. But we wouldn't have gotten here if we had not had a boatload of laughter along the way, and a boatload of counseling. So,
that's an arc's worth of counseling.
An arc's worth of counseling, yes, yeah. One of the things I was going to say too, a couple of things about, feeling like you're not doing enough or doing too much. I'm aware that, and Paul can probably chime in with this, or any of you can, but I think there is an expectation that a work week for a pastor is a full-time is like 60 hours. And that, I think that's really unhealthy, personally, because the work that we do as pastors is so much more than a job. It's who we are. It involves so much people interaction dynamics. That takes energy, and it takes fuel. It takes emotional fuel, it takes spiritual fuel, and physical fuel to be able to do that. And so if that is an expectation of a congregation, and it is an expectation of the pastor, I think there needs to be a rebalancing that has to happen with that. And along that same line, I want to say, those of us who have family relationships and family commitments, every yes to the congregation is a no to our family. And I will talk about that from our own personal experience. Our children are 10 years apart. Our son is 44, but he can attest to how much he felt the church and the needs of people in the church were more important to us than him. And that's time I'm never going to get back. We have built our relationship to a point where we are incredibly graced with each other's joy and being, but it's taken time. And
so I just want to tack something onto that. Many years ago, I was a camp director down at Rickman Center. And so counselors, lay people, pastors, we'd have the midnight bowl of ice cream. And to a person, it was a lament how much time they weren't with their family. And that's just true.
Yeah. So I think, again, what we do is important. And I think anybody, I don't think it's just pastors, I think people in the helping professions in general, counselors, social workers, teachers,
medical.
medical people, we're seeing that right now. How many of the people in the medical field are expending huge amounts of themselves and their energy, and even putting themselves and their families at risk because they're helping save lives. So I think it's really important to not underestimate how much that balance between yes to church and no to family, how that can be unhealthy. And to that end, one of the things that we talked about with encouraging people in the congregation, how they can care for pastors, is recognizing and thanking family members for how much time they sacrifice with their loved ones in order for them to be in the church, in order to do the work of the church. And doing kindnesses for a family member, or giving a pastor and a spouse a gift card for a night out, or whatever the equivalent would be now. Those kinds of things, and doing something, caring for their children if they have kiddos. Those things are invaluable.
Right. And the piece that I would add there is that finding something that pastor and partner would really want to do, because there's some people who couldn't care less about going out to dinner. But boy, if you could get them a cabin down in the Ozarks for a couple days, that would be cool. But again, you have to pay attention to your pastor and what he or she likes, what their hobbies are.
Okay, we have talked a lot. So I see some of you taking notes, but I would welcome some questions or comments before we say anything else.
I was thinking maybe, and some of you could be thinking while you perhaps are thinking of something else too. I'd like to hear examples from pastors what beautiful expression of care was given to you that really, really meant a lot. Or if you're in the congregation, what did you see that was energizing of the congregation caring for your pastor? Or what is the wonderful thing that you've discovered to care for yourself too? So any of those three.
Well, I'll tell a short story about something that we've done in our congregation during COVID. We have had our Christian Women's Fellowship actually has always done a card ministry. They make cards and they sell them as a fundraiser for their budget that they keep. But what we've done during COVID is kind of twist that a little bit, and we've sent out, I think it's 3 times now, we have sent out a handmade card to every member of the church. Wow. And it's not just one person who's doing it. We've had a whole group of people who were willing to do it, maybe once only, maybe all 3 times. But so it's coming from another member on behalf of the church to all members. Mm-hmm. And so that's, something that we've been doing to care for each other. But I've been kind of coordinating the effort, and one woman of the church actually sent me a card, and she said, "I knew you didn't put yourself on the list. And so I knew you wouldn't be getting any cards." And she was absolutely right. And so out of all 3 times that we did it, that was the one card that I got back. And that was very special for me. And so you talk about knowing, for those of you who don't know me, I work in the East Office here in St. Louis. And my husband is the pastor of my home church. So I'm kind of doing this as the pastor's wife. And so she knew exactly me to a T, and bless her heart, did something that she knew that I would be really grateful for.
That's great. Yeah, that's a good story there, Susan.
And Susan, I really appreciated what you said about that, because I think there are lots of pastor spouses who wouldn't think to put themselves on the list. Yeah. I mean, that's just a very self-sacrificing thing that we expect of our leadership. And that's one of the things that's really important about changing that narrative, that it is healthy and good to put yourself on whatever good list that is, because that again shows that you are a person just like anyone else, and people need to know that. I think too often in some of the churches that I've been a part of, the ministers is just supposed to take over and do everything, and we'll write a check and show up on Sunday morning when we feel like it, but there's not really much commitment to the ministry, and nor to the pastor. And so being able to have parishioners who really value the pastor and want to show their care and love in healthy, appropriate ways and personal ways goes a long way towards making that balance much more healthy.
The Olivet congregation has the most incredible shepherding care team of any church I've ever served. And the list of people that they send out either cards or phone calls or emails to every week is amazing. But on that list every week, in the updater that is the email that goes out to everyone, they include the search team for sure, and they include the staff. And it's just really supportive. It just feels really good that they very intentionally include all of us as part of that prayer list. It's really neat.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Colleen, did you have a point, or is that an affirmation?
No, it was actually an affirmation. The church that I served in Camdenton has a prayer shawl ministry. And when they started that prayer shawl ministry, my husband was diagnosed with ALS, and I was the first one that they gave the first prayer shawl to. And then from there on, they have, Eileen, I don't know if you're able to say how many shawls they've given out over the years, but it's too many to count, I'm sure. But the thought that and I did not put myself on any list, but the fact that they gave me the prayer shawl recognized their concern and care. And that was, I still have the shawl in my office.
That's great. Yeah,
Yay.
that's good. Others. Yeah, Julie.
In one church that I served, a couple would give us a couple days at their timeshare, my husband and I, once a year. And boy, that was just really therapeutic. We chose, to disengage from social media during that time, and just found that when we were there, we knew it was their space, during a week that they were giving up. And so we just felt really, really grateful for that. Yeah. I also a couple times got a gift certificate for a massage, and again, sometimes you don't know how tired or stressed your body is until you get some body work, and I always really appreciated that. On the flip side, you have emphasized a couple times that we don't always know how much we're carrying. And I remember one Advent season, and I was serving on the staff of two churches at the same time at that time. And someone walked in my door with a beautiful basket of, I think it was food items and stuff. And I remember, to my chagrin, that my first thought was, oh no, another thank you note to write.
Yeah, that's a pretty good indicator.
And so I realized, wow, I better stop and tune in here.
Yeah.
and get a little more balanced, because that's not the kind of response I hope to get. I didn't say anything, at least, but that was my first internal.
Good. Those were inside words. Yeah. That's good. Oh, yeah.
I think just like being a college student who's away, who gets a care package during finals,
Yes.
I've gotten a couple of care packages, one this week from the pension fund. It was the mask. I'm a member of the pension fund,
right.
so they're taking care of their enrollees and all that, just a simple thing. But It was just hit at the right time. Because, thank you for
Showing off
thinking
his
of
mask.
us. I don't,
Yeah,
the
excellent.
alternative was 2 nights in New Orleans that the pension fund was going to help provide, and that got canceled with COVID. So it's like,
Oh,
I didn't go to New Orleans, but I got a mask. But nonetheless, it was. And then another ministry that I partner with, sent a care package of fair trade goodies. And,
yes.
again, like you, Julie, so that, I did not anticipate how much that meant to me. It hit at the right time, and that was right at the beginning of the COVID. I think they knew what was coming. So you just small things that you think, oh, it's kind of throwaway. I'll just pick this up for so and so. It really does mean a lot.
Yeah, yeah. I guess I want to, invite if there are particular challenges that we haven't even mentioned, if there are stressors that are going on for you during all of this, that you want to just put it out there.
I think that means, oh, go ahead, Stephen, sorry.
One of the things that I think about, and it's partly due to my, the way I structure my time. But, you talked about the expectation that, normal work week for a pastor is 60 hours a week, and we're trying to bring that down. One of the things that I think about oftentimes, I remember having a conversation with a clergy group. This is several years back. And one of the things I picked up on is they kept saying, your day off. Your one day off. What do you do? Yeah. What is your one day off? And I think that's one of the things that is also sort of unrecognized is most people have 2 days together that they can do things. And so I think that's one of the challenges of ministry is, so if you're going to take 2 days a week off, it's most likely going to be like Monday and Saturday. Those you can't really do much in that time.
Yeah.
So
right.
so I think sort of recognizing that Sunday is a work day,
right,
and you need to sort of allow maybe some additional time. And I'm in the situation where I am single, so I don't have the family dynamic going on. But if a pastor were to have children or a spouse, more than likely their day off is going to be Saturday and Sunday. Right. So it really is a tough dynamic to be able to have that quality time with your family.
Stephen, I just wanted to tack on. I really appreciate what you said there. I'm thinking about pastors who have moved hundreds of miles away from their own families. And it's really awkward to get back to spend time with their loved ones in another state. And how our church is supporting that effort for that pastor and family to get back to their loved ones. And I was thinking just in terms of, do they have someone to pick up the kids from whatever activity because something happened at church? I mean, is there a list of people you can call to help you out when life happens? Yeah. I think that was difficult for us when we're both from the Cleveland area, and when we were in Indianapolis. It was really hard to get back to Ohio to see our families for weekend events because, oh gosh, I guess Sunday is a work day. So, and then they're all back to their own schedule Monday through Friday. So it really can be a problem for pastors to connect with their families.
Well, and I was thinking particularly Christmas was always a hassle because we had Christmas Eve service. So if we wanted to be with our families, we had to drive on Christmas Day. And, that was just always, it was a tug, it was like, do we stay here and have our own Christmas together here, or do we hit the road and go visit family? And so, but I think that it's just, it's something that doesn't rise to the consciousness of most members of congregations.
Mhm. Well, we are rounding out the hour. Went by incredibly quickly. So much great wisdom and feedback. And I guess I'll speak for you. Bob and Coletta are always available. If you have some follow up, professionally or just as colleagues,
Yes.
contact me, and I'll tell you how to get a hold of them if you would like. And appreciate all of you dedicating your time. I'm not going to ask, what did you give up to participate in this thing? But we're greatly appreciative, and certainly warmed our mind, body, and spirits to see everyone here participating tonight. So, and thank you, Bob and Coletta, for sharing yourselves with us tonight. Absolutely.
You're welcome. I hope each one of you got something that you needed and wanted from this time. So thank you for taking the time.
Tomorrow, our next Thursday, our next Better Together Thursday, we will welcome Alex Ruth, who's the co-coordinator of the General Church Office of Disciples Men. And they have a new curriculum called the Jesus Way. That is a collaboration of the general, regional, and local church. So a way to feed the spirits of men. And we'll talk about hurting souls. That is a significant population of hurting souls. So we'll share some ideas of how to engage them spiritually into the life of the congregation as well. So, and that's at 11 o'clock on Thursday late morning. So we'll have more information about that. So any other parting words does anybody have before we go our merry ways? All right, well, thank you and blessings to everyone.
Yay.
Take care.
Bye.